Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service on this 14th day of June 2021, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got, we've got hazardous weather graphic there again. No watches, no warnings, and no advisories are out anywhere in the state. A little windy today out along the Alaska Peninsula and in the southwest interior with gusts 50-55 miles an hour across the Alaska Peninsula, but that not quite enough to put any advisories out, and that's going to diminish markedly tonight. Lose those winds considerably as that frontal system weakens, but other than that, looking pretty good. High pressure aloft, building into the interior with that persistent south to north flow over the eastern Bering Sea, keeping the clouds and surges of moisture in across the Alaska Peninsula all the way up the western coast Seward Peninsula to the northwest coast there. But sunshine today in the interior. Allowed temperatures to rise at early to mid-afternoon into the 80s. Salcia east of Fairbanks, 81 degrees at 3 p.m. or 2 p.m. Living Good, 80 degrees. And Beaver up to 82 degrees. And Chalkyitsik had about 81. Otherwise, we had 70-degree weather as far west as Unalakleet. They were right at 70 at 3 p.m. And Buckland, up north there on the north side of the Seward Peninsula, had 72 degrees. And then it was much cooler at the clouds and moisture and wind out along the coast. Otherwise, mostly sunny conditions into Bristol Bay. You can see a lot of low clouds there, southern Kodiak Island. But up toward Fognak Island or north of maybe Pasagchak, looks like it cleared out quite a bit, all the way up to the Kenai Peninsula, Kamishak, Kachemak Bay, sunshine, Resurrection Bay, sunshine, Prince William Sound, and warm temperatures also over the Copper River Basin, Chatina, up to, 79 degrees at 3 p.m., probably will top out in the lower 80s before the day's over. And Big Lake, 77 degrees. So pushing 80 in the Susitna Valley today. Kenai Peninsula, mid-70s. Inland areas away from the inlet. 25 knot southwest wind at Homer, keeping a little cooler there, but not too bad. And showers moved into the Panhandle with some clouds. Light amounts of precipitation, with Cake picking up about 0.12 of an inch. That was the heaviest amount I could find down there. While Wrangell had a light rain shower going at 3 p.m. And they had about 0.07 of an inch. And that whole area will be shifting northward into the northern panhandle, and it'll dry out over the southern areas tonight. And you can see clear skies or mostly sunny skies all the way up to the north slope and possibly out to the Arctic coast there. On the chart, a few showers developing over the central eastern Brooks Range and maybe over the mountainous terrain there north and northeast of Fairbanks, Chena, possible showers, but really nothing too widespread or significant. And more significant there over the southeast coast, as I mentioned, but even that wasn't all that much as far as rain goes. Heavier rainfall amounts, though, did occur with the band of moisture there in the low pressure areas and the southerly flow from the Alaska Peninsula on up to the northwest coast. Tin City, 24-hour amount, 0.7 of an inch of rain, and Point Hope had about 1/10 of an inch. And St. George had 3/4 of an inch of rain. Again, that's a 24-hour amount there, with Nome picking up 1/3 of an inch of precipitation. So kind of picking up from what it was over the last couple of days there, but then it's going to slacken off as that whole band of moisture weakens and shifts eastward a little bit there. And a little bit of moisture moving into the far western Aleutians, and then gradient there with that front, which is now farther to the north. Seeing winds gusted to, Cold Bay, or Port Hayden, gusts 52 miles an hour out of the southeast. Cold Bay, 54 miles an hour, again out of the southeast there, and up along the southwest coast. Kipnook had 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and even in inland areas of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, pretty windy day, 25 to 35-mile-an-hour wind gusts right up into the Seward Peninsula there. Otherwise, sunshine, temperatures as I mentioned, into the 70s and lower 80s at mid-afternoon. And for tonight, that frontal weaken, you can see gradient really slackens off, so the winds are going to come down very noticeably probably this evening and become much lighter. Still a little breezy up there along the northwest coast of that southwest flow, and the low pressure area tracking off to the northeast. And that's going to help push that rain area into the western North Slope, possibly reaching the central Arctic coast with some light precipitation, but still a fairly continuous band of light rain or showers will extend from the DeLong Mountains, Western Brooks Range, down across eastern Norton Sound to the lower Yukon River Valley in the Delta, Kuskokwim Delta, periods of rain. And again, lighter winds. Alaska Peninsula stays wet, but again, diminishing winds and rainfall amounts lighter. Chances of a shower, southwest Kodiak Island in that area of clouds or maybe drizzle. But dry central and eastern interior, mild overnight lows since the night's overnight period isn't too long, and temperatures in the 80s today, so probably looking at lows 55 to 60 over the central interior. And those showers shift northward into the Panhandle as it dries out with high pressure over the southern southeast coast. High pressure in the Gulf of Alaska, light winds. Areas of low clouds and fog remaining off the coast there, except that may slide into Kodiak Island. And a weak low keeping it cloudy and damp over the west central Aleutians. We'll see tomorrow that or actually for Tuesday, that moves east-southeast and keeps a chance of rain, fog, and drizzle for Adak, Atka. Scattered showers for the Fox Islands, scattered showers for the Alaska Peninsula. Low clouds, fog, rain, and drizzle for the Pribilof Islands, kind of typical summer pattern there. And again, that area of moisture pushes into the interior and weakens. Just looking at some shower activity now along the Yukon River from the Delta into Nunivak Island, and risk of a thunderstorm over the Talkeetnas, Copper River Basin, but that's just a slight chance at this point, and chance of showers over the Panhandle. That'll keep temperatures a little cooler. Still looking for some sunshine for Kodiak Island. And eastern interior, again, highs into the mid-80s. North Slope looking good as well. Mostly sunny skies, risk of a shower on the central coast. High pressure redeveloping over the western Aleutians there in the Bering Sea. So no big storms on the horizon at all. And that one pretty much staying to the south, kicks off to the east-northeast there. Doesn't quite make it to the Queen Charlotte Islands, that frontal boundary. High pressure ridge builds over the Panhandle and along the North Gulf Coast, and that's going to drive cooler air in off the ocean, definitely into Prince William Sound, probably blowing in on southeast winds into the Cook Inlet area, along with more clouds and a better chance of showers during the day, especially the afternoon on Wednesday. So cooler temperatures tomorrow will be the warmest day, and chance of thunderstorms into the Tanana Valley and upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country across the Copper River Basin. Sunny and warm western interior, especially along the Yukon River Valley area to the Porcupine, and maybe some clouds, risk of a shower for the Brooks Range, Arctic coast, North Slope, mostly sunny. And that band gets shoved back to the west due to the building high pressure along the west coast, and also for the North Gulf Coast, but just some low clouds, fog, and drizzle, maybe some IFR for St. Lawrence Island. And that could wrap back into the eastern Aleutians, and that's about it. That's about the most significant weather you'll see out there, with that high over the western Bering, keeping it partly to mostly sunny in some areas of the Aleutians, and winds will be light and definitely dry. Taking a look at the lows tonight, 55 to 60, Yukon Flats there to the central interior, Tanana Valley, Fairbanks area, closer to 50 or into the upper 40s, Tok, Northway to Eagle. And 40s to lower 50s, south central Alaska, upper 40s, Copper River Basin, upper 40s to lower 50s for the Panhandle. Kodiak Island, upper 40s, mid 40s, or lower to mid 40s for the Bristol Bay, mid 40s Alaska Peninsula, lower 40s for the Aleutians, upper 30s for the Pribilofs, lower 30s there, St. Lawrence Island, western Seward Peninsula, and anywhere from 35 to 40 for the Arctic coast, and milder there for the North Slope, 40s to lower 50s into the Brooks Range as well. Tomorrow highs, mid 80s, Yukon Flats, probably the Fairbanks area as well, with near 80 for the remainder of the eastern interior, mid-70s for the Kuskokwim Valley, a little cooler down to the south, 65 to 70 Bristol Bay, and call it 65 to 83, depending on your location to the inlet there for the Kenai Peninsula, Madawaska-Susitna Valley. Temperatures pushing near 80 again for the Copper River Basin, upper 50s and lower 60s for the Panhandle with clouds and showers. Near 60 Kodiak, lower 50s Alaska Peninsula, 40s Bering Sea and the Aleutians, lower 40s for St. Lawrence Island. And for your lows the following morning, 55 to 60 in the central interior, otherwise 40s and lower 50s everywhere else except for the Bering Strait and Arctic coast in the 30s. And then the highs, a little cooler, still into the 80s there, Yukon Flats, but cooling off with the clouds and moisture, south central Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather graphic for Tuesday morning. Marginal VFR along the Arctic coast, but VFR for the North Slope across the Brooks Range right on down into Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound. Marginal VFR creeping up into Kachemak Bay and Kamishak Bay. IFR, we're spreading Kodiak Island, Fognak Island marginal, Bristol Bay marginal, and IFR inland into the Yukon Delta. Nunivak Island, most of the Seward Peninsula, right up along the northwest coast, and all of the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, then even that IFR zone extending across the southern Gulf of Alaska, right into the central and southern Panhandle, and northward there, up the over on the eastern interior, or toward the border, right up into Lynn Canal, it looks like. And for the afternoon, shaping up, get the cursor on the right monitor here, and now I'll hit the there, Tuesday afternoon, IFR, Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, Elfin Cove, on over to about Yakutat, otherwise marginal VFR, on down to Dixon Entrance. Marginal VFR, eastern North Gulf Coast, Cordova right on the edge, southern Montague Island, just south of Cairns Head, or Cairns Point, Cairns Head, Resurrection Bay, we'll call it. And still in Kachemak Bay, Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet, marginal. Kodiak Island, IFR retreating a little bit there, but still probably covering Sitkinak. And VFR now for the afternoon for Bristol Bay. IFR still socked in over the Aleutians and Bering Sea through the Bering Strait and remaining off the Arctic coast. But marginal VFR sliding eastward there, southern slopes of the western Alaska Range along mountains, Noatak Valley. And then for the day Wednesday morning, VFR, interior Alaska, marginal for the central eastern Arctic coast, and then marginal than IFR conditions, coastal areas of the northwest coast through the Bering Strait and down across St. Lawrence Island, Nunivak Island, all of the Bering Sea and all of the Aleutians, most of the Alaska Peninsula, and southern Kodiak Island. And southeast coast, pretty IFR-ish starting out Wednesday, and North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, IFR, marginal VFR now pushing up into Turnagain Arm, probably reaching the Chugach Mountains and possibly the Madawaska Valley, and overrunning the Copper River Basin, at least the southern areas, over toward the Wrangell Mountains. Afternoon, marginal VFR holds there for the Talkeetnas and into the Wrangells. Also kind of hung up there, say, call it the Chugach Mountains. And Kinnick, more likely Turnagain Arm, they'll see lower conditions than Kinnick Arm will. And IFR, western Prince William Sound, down across possibly Resurrection Bay and the east side of Kodiak, Fognak Island, south coast of the Alaska Peninsula, all of the Aleutians and Bering Sea. Mostly IFR at times at some point in the day, anywhere in the Bering Sea, run into that. Probably won't be solid IFR, but low conditions nonetheless, with marginal VFR for the Gulf of Alaska, a narrow band of IFR there, North Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle. And for Anaktuvik, possible marginal VFR increasing on the southern entrance there, that moisture is sort of expanding eastward, possibly otherwise VFR. And Adigan will stay VFR tomorrow in either approach. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR looking good. As well for Rainy, another VFR day coming up. Windy VFR, ceilings visibilities, probably not unlimited, with the might get some building Q in the afternoon for Isabel and Mentasta. But staying VFR definitely for Tanita, either approach and either entrance or portage. Good VFR for one more day. Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR trending toward IFR as the day wears on. And the freezing levels, 4,000 feet over the Chukchi Sea and the southern Bering Sea. They're just north of Amchitka. island. Otherwise, about 8 to 9,000 feet interior Alaska, a little lower there with that upper disturbance over the Panhandle, 6,000 feet. And icing with that moisture sliding northward, the best chance of the most significant icing would be Lynn Canal Glacier Bay there. Could see some considerable moderate in that zone. Otherwise, light to isolated, moderate or mixed icing, and then the remnant moisture there from Norton Sound down across Nunivak Island, the Alaska Peninsula. Jet stream, high pressure ridging over the interior there, and so this jet, 110 knot southwest jet in the western Arctic coast, 9,000 feet. We've got 35 to 50 knot winds up there, strongest on the Arctic coast, and 3,000 feet. Let's see, for the Bering Sea, low pressure there, the one low out farther west near just south of Atka, northeast 30 knots, southeast 30 to 35 knots across the Alaska Peninsula, up to 40 knots western Arctic coast. Turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop, western Arctic coast, Nunivak Island to the Alaska Peninsula.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, joined again by Eric Stevens from the GINA, or Geographic Information Network of Alaska at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thanks for joining us again, Eric.
Glad to be here.
Thanks. We are talking about satellites today, and what are satellites? And the easy way to talk about that would be to introduce our friend the globe here, which is a round spheroid type shape. We haven't been on a flat Earth as far as history is known for several hundred years now, and because of that we also know that we are orbiting around other objects in space, and that objects are orbiting around the Earth as well. We call all those things satellites in some form or fashion, right, Eric?
Right. Well, this leads to the discussion of Johannes Kepler's research 400 years ago. Did some of the early work and founded the 3 laws of planetary motion, which are important to planets and also to weather satellites.
Okay.
Kepler's first law talks about how the orbit of an object around another object is an ellipse, not necessarily a circle.
Kind of a flattened circle?
Yeah, depending on how flat
squished
it could be.
Okay.
For our purposes, we'll just say they're mostly circular.
Okay.
The second law is most important for us, though, and that is the closer an object is to the thing it's orbiting, the faster it goes. So in the solar system, the planet Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It orbits the sun in 88 days. It moves at 100,000 kilometers an hour.
It is just
moving.
Okay.
Right. And further out from the Earth is Jupiter, and it moves at only 1/4 the speed of Mercury, and it has to go further, so it takes 12 of our years for Jupiter to make one lap. The further out you are, the slower you go.
Okay.
So we're talking about planets. What does it have to do with weather satellites? Turns out Kepler's laws apply to planets orbiting the sun. They also apply to satellites orbiting the Earth.
Okay.
You know, our natural satellite is the moon. There's the famous Apollo 8 Earthrise shot.
Beautiful shot.
Oh, yeah, you could just talk about that forever. December 1968, the moon is about 250,000 miles away from the Earth.
Okay.
It takes a month to go around the Earth. It's that far out, it takes a full month to do an orbit. Another shot here of the International Space Station. Instead of being 250,000 miles out, the ISS is only 250 miles out. It's really close. And so it doesn't take a full month for the space station to go around the Earth. It only takes 90 minutes. It's so close, it just whips right around 90 minutes.
Okay.
So weather satellites, there are a number of weather satellites, and there are a number of orbits. The further out you have the satellite, the longer it takes to go around the Earth. And this is important because different satellites have different purposes. So we have a satellite here. This little salt shaker lid will serve as our satellite going around the Earth. Let's say you have a satellite that's 22,000 miles above the Earth. This is kind of a magical spot because at that distance, it takes a full day for the satellite to go around the Earth. Imagine if you put your satellite 22,000 miles up from the equator and had it go with the Earth as the Earth spun.
At the same speed.
Right. The satellite goes around the Earth just as fast as the Earth itself is turning. In effect, the satellite will hover in one spot.
I see.
And it appears when you make a movie loop of picture after picture after picture, you can replay that and you get these movie loops. Geostationary satellites, these are called. These are stationary in appearance. And they provide a constant frame of reference. We've got an example here. Another nice thing about these satellites, since they're that far out at 22,000 miles, you can see from pole to pole, which is nice. So they're pretty broad view and a constant frame of reference.
So those are the pictures. If you're watching a weather satellite loop on TV, your favorite weather show, that's the picture that you're going to see is one that's sitting over the same spot.
If you're seeing a movie loop play again and again, that came from geostationary satellites. That's the only way you can do that.
Yeah.
The bummer, though, for us in Alaska is
Yeah.
we're up on the very top of the planet. And for geostationary satellites to work, they have to be over the equator. So for the geostationary bird to view Alaska, it's kind of like reading a book, but you're reading it edge on like that.
Right.
So there's another kind of orbit called the polar orbit,
Okay.
which is nice. We're near the pole.
Yeah.
And here's a satellite. Those polar orbiters are much closer to the Earth, getting down toward International Space Station elevation. And they're not in the equatorial plane. Rather, their orbital plane is inclined like this. And the Earth turns under that satellite as the satellite orbits. The nice thing about that is for Alaska, the satellite will go right over Alaska a few times a day. And so you get a much closer image. We've got a shot from the Sumi NPP satellite. Specifically, it's a true color image from the VIRS sensor. That's an acronym there.
Okay.
But it's a beautiful shot of Alaska, and you can see so much detail, the kind of detail because you're close in.
Very high resolution.
You couldn't get this kind of view from geostationary satellites. The advantage of these polar orbiters is nice close imagery. You can see a lot of detail. The disadvantage, though, is that the satellite flies by,
Right.
and then you have to wait a while to get the next image. And if geostationary weaknesses are that you're reading the page like that, the polar orbiter, you're reading the page straight on, but it's so close, and then it zips by, and you have to wait for the satellite to come around the Earth again. So there's no one perfect solution. Different satellites for different orbits. Each has their strength, and amazingly, it all comes back to Johannes Kepler and his laws of planetary motion. The same laws that govern how the planets orbit the sun, they govern how the satellites orbit the Earth, and even our little pretend salt shaker right here.
Right. Okay. Well, since the 1957 Sputnik, we've been putting man-made objects into orbit around the Earth and starting to get pictures back. Who knows what will happen in the next 50 to 100 years? Amazing
it's
stuff.
a growing science, and the future is bright.
Thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. And for more information on GINA and what the satellite systems do there and what Eric's been talking about today, you can go to the web address on your screen. For Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at the coastal water forecasts, not too bad wind-wise out along the coast of the Panhandle. On the south coast, south to southeast winds 10 to 15 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas. And kind of variable for the north coast there, southeast to southwest. Light, though, at 10 knots with 4 to 5 foot seas. Lynn Canal looking at southerly winds at 15 knots with 3 foot seas. And Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, southern central inside waters, south winds at 10 knots, 2 to 3 foot seas. Moving on to the outlook for Wednesday, and we've got really not too bad winds again. North coast, southeast, 10 to 15 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas, 15 to 20 knots, coming up a little bit in the south coast, with seas building 5 to 6 feet. No change over the inside waters, especially the central and southern inside waters. 10 knot winds from the south, and Lynn Canal southerly winds 15 knots with 3 foot seas. And Cook Inlet tomorrow, southwest breeze, especially in the afternoon, to 15 knots with 3 foot seas. And southwest at 10 for Kamishak Bay. Barren Island, southwest winds 10 knots. North Gulf Coast, southwest winds 10 knots, 3 foot seas. And Prince William Sound, variable to southwest at 10 knots with slight seas. And then those swing around to the east for Prince William Sound, or variable to east at 10 knots, staying light, with seas not too bad at 2 feet. Easterly winds now for the North Gulf Coast at 15 knots with 5 foot seas. Barren Islands, east winds coming up to 20 knots. Kamishak Bay, east at 15, and south to southwest, 10 knots for Cook Inlet. For the Kodiak Island area, the greater Kodiak Island area, east winds at 10 knots, 2 to 4 foot seas. Small craft advisory, Sitkinak to Castle Cape, southeast 25 knots, seas at 7 feet. Otherwise, Bristol Bay and the Alaska Peninsula, east winds 20 knots, with seas up to 8 feet on the Pacific side of the peninsula. And then for Wednesday, east-northeast at 20 for the Alaska Peninsula, with the highest seas on the Pacific side at 7 feet, otherwise 2 to 3 feet there on the Bering Sea side. Bristol Bay, light winds out of the southeast at 10 knots, and Kodiak Island, northeast winds 20 knots, with seas up to 7 feet. And for the western Aleutians, Shemya to Kiska, north winds 25 knots. Small craft advisories also for Amchitka Island, northwest at 25. Adak and Atka, Bering Sea side of the islands, east winds 25 knots, Pacific side, south at 20, sea 7 feet. Unmak Island, variable to south to east winds at 15 knots. And Unalaska Island, northwest 15 knots, 6 to 7 foot seas. Moving on to Wednesday, Unalaska Island, east winds at 20 knots, northeast 15 for Unmak Island. Adak and Atka, central Aleutian zones, north at 15. Light winds Amchitka, east at 10, and Kiskadeshimia, north at 15. For the southwest coast, heaviest winds will be south of Nunivak Island, out of the east at 20 knots, otherwise Yukon Delta coast, east at 10, south 15, St. Lawrence Island, so a lot lighter winds tomorrow than what you saw today. Norton Sound southwest at 10, and the Pribilofs north 15 with 4 foot seas. And for Wednesday, southeast at 15 knots for the southwest coast, seas 3 feet, east at 15, St. Lawrence Island, 5 knot winds out of the northeast for Norton Sound, and east winds 20 knots for the Pribilofs with 4 foot seas, and southeast of 15, St. Matthew Island. Arctic coast, east side there, southeast at 20 knots, brisk wind advisories for the central Arctic coast, southeast 25 knots, and south winds 30 knots, pretty stiff south wind there for the western Arctic coast, Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, 30 knots, and then 25 knots southerlies, Cape Thompson to Wales. And then those drop back a little bit, 20 to 25 knots, Wales to Cape Beaufort out of the south, western central Arctic coast, southwest at 20, and 15 knot winds for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. And for tonight, front edges inland and weakens, and that'll take that area of rain eastward a little bit there into the lower Yukon River Valley area, back into the Kuskokwim Delta, or the Alaska Peninsula, but much lighter winds, gradient really slackening off. High pressure Gulf of Alaska, dry conditions, fair over the interior, mild lows in the upper 50s in the central interior, and showers over the northern panhandle now, dries out down to the south. And for the day Tuesday, hot in the interior, risk of a thunderstorm, Talkeetna Mountains, Copper River Basin, otherwise central eastern interior, 70s to mid 80s. Kodiak Island stays nice, Bristol Bay, showery and unsettled out over the eastern Aleutians. And then cooler and cloudier with a better chance of showers, isolated thunderstorms, southeast interior, Copper River Basin, and stays showery over the panhandle. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.